We're here on chalk. Chalk, you understand? Sort of
Gullet,
yeah, okay. And this hill fort used to be part of a peninsula of chalk, and we think that about 5000 BC, people started to think that because this area was higher up and slightly detached, it was sacred, it was important. And then in about 400 BC, during the Iron Age, it was made into a fort. So as you walk in, you will see double ditches. And what they did was to dig in and throw soil on either side to create this boundary. It was not a moat. There was never water here because it's chalk. It's chalk, and chalk is very, very porous. Which brings us to another reason why this site was not particularly good to be a permanent settlement, because where are you going to get your water from? It is a serious, serious problem. So that was another factor. But in an era when people were very worried about other people attacking them, this was a very useful place to come to retreat. So it became a place where you could defend yourself. So for many, many centuries, people would be living outside this area. Old Sarum. They would be living down in the valley, but when there was a rumour or messages saying this tribe is about to attack, they would all bring their animals up here and they would wait here until the attackers went. It is very, very difficult to actually attack here and be successful. Almost impossible. Now you came in what is called the east entrance to this central enclosure. There's another small entrance, very small entrance on the other side. So basically there was one entrance. So if you wanted to attack, you had to go up, down, up, and then there was this central area eventually. Okay, so we've got as far as the Iron Age. The next most significant thing, of course, is when the Romans came. Now, Londinium, London was a very important centre. Venta Belgarum, which is Winchester, another very important Roman settlement. You also had Bath and Exeter. So this area here saw places where lots of Roman roads converged. So there was a road there that went up to London, another road here that went to Exeter. So it was a useful place for people to meet, but it wasn't an important Roman settlement because it's not a very sensible place to have a settlement, okay? And then after the Romans left Britain in roughly 400 AD. So they were here around and about for almost 400 years, but after they left, gradually we have the Angles and Saxons coming in, And again, this was used as a place for defence. So you would come here if you were threatened, particularly at the time of the Viking invasions. So people would come here because the most important city round here was Wilton. And you're in the county of Wiltshire, and it takes its name Wiltonshire. So Wilton was the most important place. And there you had the treasury, where a mint to make coins was settled. But after one invasion, they moved the mint here. So we did have a place here where they made coinage. So that was very important. It was a treasury and a place where you had a mint. So that's one of the reasons why this was important, because of that. And of course, if people wanted to steal your money, this is a very difficult place to access. Every English school child knows one date. If they only know one date in British history, it's 1066 because the Normans came and they changed everything in this country. So William the Conqueror was incredibly successful, and one of the things that he did was to take over any defensive sites which had previously been used by the Anglo-Saxons and turn them into Norman fortresses. So this was an ideal defensive site. So to start with, you would have had here a wooden palisade, so a wooden defensive structure all the way around the centre, and you would have a basic fortress made, and that would have been there. So as you come in this main entrance, you would have seen a wooden fortification. Eventually, of course, when William gets more settled, that all becomes stone, and we get a stone wall built, and all these buildings would have been constructed in stone. The other thing, of course, that people were in the 11th century was extremely religious, and the church, if you like, was the second wing of power for William the Conqueror, because he had physical power, but he also needed to understand, and the people needed to understand, that he had God on his side. After you have Henry II's death, I don't know if you've heard of Richard the Lionheart, King John. Okay, King John in particular was somebody who fell out with the church. And after that time, there were buildings still here, but the cathedral was pretty much demolished. In the 1300s, the remains of the cathedral were used to build the wall around the close in Salisbury, and things carried on pretty much the same way until you get to the reign of Henry VIII. And Henry VIII was persuaded there was nothing much useful here, so he allowed people to take usable stone and just take it. He sold it. He sold all the usable stone, which is why we've just got kind of rubble here. Can you see where the outlines of the old cathedral? Yeah. It's smaller, and then the extension done by Bishop Roger comes up further towards us. Can you see that? Where it's kind of yellow, and there's an axe round the middle. That will be the edge of the old cathedral, and that's the one that collapsed 5 days after completion. Then there's the extension eastward by Bishop Roger, and that was obviously much larger. Can you see to your right, there's an area which is sort of lying low down? That would be where the cloisters are, and adjacent to that would be a bishop's palace as well.
Een van het schoolvoorbeeld van die early English stijl. de 13e eeuw een beetje beheerst heeft. En ook als voorbeeld heeft gewerkt voor andere Engelse kathedralen.
The old advice to marry well, if you can. This lady, Eleanor Schackenberg, was from Sweden, came to be a lady in waiting to, or maid of honor to Queen Elizabeth I. She married the Marquis of Northampton, who died, and then she married again Sir Thomas Gorge, who was even more rich. So at a time when life expectancy was about 45, she died aged 86 and had 98 descendants. So she married well. And
we have to go back to 907, where the English king was King Edward the Elder. His father was King Alfred, which we may all have heard of. Huh?
We did. Yes.
Edward had a daughter, Elfrida, who wanted to become a nun, and so he founded a small community of nuns here on an island in the marsh. We have a community of nuns, probably 25 or 30, in wooden huts and a small wooden church. In around 940, 950, we're not sure exactly when, the Vikings attacked. The Vikings came, the buildings were destroyed, burnt down. Well, they were only wood. In 964, King Edgar, the later Saxon king, he refounded this convent under the Benedictine rule. And it was a stone building, stone community. Where we are standing roughly now, I can show you the remains of the old church. We have a little bit of it left, the foundations. Right, so that church lasted until 1020. In 1020, they started building this present building. And St. Ethelfrida, who was an abbess here in the 1000s, early 1000s, and she was an abbess here. And because of certain miracles that occurred because of her presence, she became a saint. It is one of our dedications. So, this building was commenced in 1120. They built down 4 bays of the nave in the Norman rounded arch style. Look, you'll see the clerestrial clear story, which is the one with the windows in at the top, that is actually pointed arch. You can also see, that is in fact, when they got down the first 4 bays of the nave in 1180, they stopped building. 1220, they built from the west end eastward and put the clerestory on. But the style had changed. They'd styled from rounded arches to pointed arches, but they put the pointed arches in at that end. And we have lancet windows at the end there. The town grew up because of the convent, and the townspeople needed a church. So they screened off the North Aisle, and they used the North Aisle as their parish church. So at our Reformation in 1539, when the nuns were thrown out of here, then the town people took over the whole church. He is actually buried here. This is not just a memorial, he is actually buried here. He is facing the sea. That's why the grave isn't that way on. He's actually facing the sea. His wife was buried at sea, Edwina. She was buried at sea. Now, he's actually, this is where he wanted to be buried. Underneath the memorial to the St. Barb family. The St. Barbs were a family that were given the Broadlands estate. John and Grisel, they were parliamentarians of the Civil War, that family. And of course, this is from the 1500s to the 1600s, when we had our little contretemps with Cromwell. They were parliamentarians. And they died within 24 hours of each other of a sweating sickness. We do not know what that sweating sickness actually was. However, they died within 24 hours of each other. But the interesting thing here, and the children love this, died on the 27th of January, 1694. The reason was, we used to have the first day of the year was March the 25th, Lady Day. That's when you would, for a farm labourer, a carter, a shepherd, or whatever, you would go down to the marketplace and you would stand and wait for a farmer to come along and say, I need 3 labourers, you, and you. I need a shepherd. Good, how's your dog? Right, you'll do. Carter, right, you come with me. And that would be your job, your work for the next year. If you were lucky, you stayed with the same farmer, but you might not. So that's what that was all about. 25th of January, 25th of March, Lady Day. But in that year, they moved the start of the year from March 25th to January the 1st. So, did he die in 93 or did he die in 94? In that case, we put both down to be on the safe side.
I believe you've been told that Stonehenge was not built all at once. It was built over roughly a period, very roughly, of about 1,500 years, over a period of time. And the first thing that they did was they built a henge. It's basically a circular earthwork with a ditch. Now most henges have ditches inside and the earthwork on the outside. Stonehenge is unusual. It's one of the only henges that has actually the ditch outside with the course, originally they just had a stone circle round here, and the first thing was these sarsen stones. These are these very big sandstones. You see there are some of them upright over there, okay? And these sarsens came from a place called Marlborough. Now I'm going to point in the direction. It's about 30 kilometres away in that direction. They have to get these very big stones from there to here.
She used to write to Thomas Hardy, and these are some of the letters. And she also liked to write to his wife or wives.
Misschien degene die dat hier onthouden wil. Well, there seems to be set up for afternoon tea or something.
Or that's actually.
This college was originally founded in 1523 by a gentleman called Cardinal Wolsey. You all know who Wolsey is? Yeah. Henry VIII and Cardinal Wolsey. He'd studied here at Oxford at Magdalen College, and he wanted to find the most fabulous, biggest, beautiful college in all of Oxford. So what he did was he took over a priory that was on the site here, and with typical Wolsey ruthlessness, he swept away a lot of it, and he started to construct his college. It was called Cardinal's College at that time.
Oh, that's why
That's why the candle's hat. Exactly, you've got it. That's exactly right. So Cardinal's College, he starts to construct it, but then he falls from power because he doesn't get the divorce, of course, that Henry VIII wants from Catherine of Aragon. So he's out of favour, falls from power, and at that time his college, as well as his home Hampton Court Palace, reverts to the crown. This then becomes known as Henry VIII's College at Oxford, so not a very original name, and then was refounded in 1546 as Christ Church as we know it today. But what's happened here is that when Henry VIII took over this college, he takes the chapel from the college foundation, which is there. Cardinal Wolsey was going to get rid of that. We don't have a lot to thank Henry VIII for. He destroyed a lot in England, but he did save the chapel here. So he saves it, and then he makes the chapel from his college into the cathedral for his newly created Diocese of Oxford. Lots of bicycles. Oxford is very flat, so we have lots of bicycles here. So it's to stop the bikes and knocking people over in the meadows. Sorry, Morse, Inspector Morse and Inspector Lewis. You'll often see them walking down here. So now, when you see them walking along a cobbled street, you can say, "I've been there. I stood there." And there's one. Have you been? He's getting the best of it. There's one Endeavour. Has anybody watched the episodes of Endeavour, the prequel, which is telling the early days of Inspector Morse? Yeah. And he comes and he stands here and he looks up at those biblical carvings above Merton College, so you might be able to recognise that as well. This is the University Church of St Mary the Virgin, and a church has stood here right in the centre of the old walled city for over 1,000 years, so it's been here a long time. The university developed slowly and there are no classrooms, so the university adopt this as their home for their teaching space, the early teachers of the university. So you can really say that this is the start of the university as we know it today, and it spans out from here.